Our platform is not a silver bullet, but it is a tipping and queuing mechanism. It is continuously monitoring hundreds of millions of unique business entities around the world in real time and news sources so that you can see a supply chain event that has occurred in real time and then say, is that company that just got affected by that anywhere in my supply chain and how am I impacted? But what we're seeing in this highly regulated environment is that as the government, we have government customers, obviously. We also have large commercial customers. And I think the way it's normally done, when the government kind of puts in flow down clauses in contracts, thou shalt not, right? There's statements around ensuring the integrity of your supply chain, or Section 889 in the National Defense Authorization Act. Those create this, that's just a regulated environment. But what we're seeing is that there's an industry and government collaboration. It's not turning into this finger-pointing exercise of government looks in the platform, sees an exposure to a sanctioned entity somewhere, gets on the phone and says, what are you doing? It's, hey, how do we solve this? So where that goes to is, I think right now we're seeing, on the Hill and in the building, it is a bipartisan issue. There is no, this is one area where we can all agree that it has to be tackled collaboratively, not just as a bipartisan issue, but with industry, right? And not in the true sense of a public-private partnership, but in the sense of like, we can't solve this alone. Industry isn't going to solve this alone. The entire, I think I saw a GAO report that said DOD has somewhere north of 200,000 suppliers in the DIB, if you will. That's a lot, right? You can't manage that manually. It doesn't matter how you try. It doesn't matter how many people you throw at that
assuming
problem.
They've got it counted correctly, right?
Right, exactly.
The audits are an indicator of any of their like data cleanliness.
And but I've seen 365,000 in another report, right? So somewhere in there, there's companies that maybe
It's
the
a
GAO
solid margin of error.
That is, and that to us is like, well, that's actually what we're talking about. Yeah. You are doing business with companies that you maybe don't know you're doing business with. So identify, first of all, understanding that there is a problem, right? So COVID again, everyone, our CEO says, her mom didn't really know what she did for a living before COVID. And then everyone knew what a supply chain was. But she's been doing this for 18 years. So I think we're seeing, I'm only seeing great strides, actually, right? In this unifying effort within, on the Hill and within the building. And some of it is, hey, we're going to create more regulations, right? Obviously Section 889 is a start point. But the National Defense Authorization Act will be updated. There will be additional companies. There will be, the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act. Those types of regulations will continue to drive behavior in the market, right? Who do you do business with, and how do you ensure that you aren't doing business with them down, upstream in your supply chain? So I think we are seeing that like a very good step forward at every level, where I think we still need help, right? Is how do we get technology into the government? How do we, right? So, of course, this whole collaboration, this effort is around speed to market, speed to value, right? And the government market is a tough market. It's a highly regulated market. There are, we have contract vehicles and contracting requirements. So create the requirements and let us answer them. That's it, right? And then how do we bring that technology into the department at scale? Well, frankly, it's by finding the right partners, which again, going from what Interos was, sort of our structure around this, a federal team, we're now a global public sector team because things like AUKUS matter, right? We've got a new trilateral agreement around a capability to be deployed into the Pacific, right? And that is a large global supply chain. So how do we, how can we work within the industry and those governments to ensure that supply chain is resilient, right?
Yeah, I think there's one. I mean, I appreciate that you thought that was a bullshitty answer.
I didn't think it was
a great
bullshitty.
answer.
I might have overinterpreted your Canadian apologist.
Yeah, exactly. I have to. It's actually codified in Canada that I have to apologize.
No, I think the interesting question, right? There's absolutely, hey, how do I inject? How do we make sure we've got the right folks involved? How do we make sure that supply chain and the associated like transparency, or maybe that's the right word, resiliency, is something that's not and it's something worth thinking about, especially, and I mean, you and I have sort of shared backgrounds of running around on the ground, right? Like there was no real non-permissive environment. Like we still kind of got our asses kicked and it was really permissive. So what happens when, like, you start talking AUKUS Pillar 2 with the tech transfers and stuff like that, and we get into like an actual A2AD or an actual, non-permissive, near peer comms denied, pick your, whatever the Pentagon bingo buzzword is of the day for it. Supply chain really matters at that point. Yeah. Because you might have to disaggregate it and change the way it's functioning. Well, so how do you bring that up to the strategic level for some of the folks thinking about that? Right? Yeah, right. The $1 million question.
Yeah. I think, well, first of all, there's an inherent level of curiosity that you need to have to explore this, because I'm sure, I haven't encountered them, but I'm sure there are people in industry and government that look at it and say, I'd rather not know the answer to some of the questions.
I have absolutely encountered those people.
Right. Yes. So they exist.
It's like, hey, I found something bad. They're like, nope, if you tell me, I'm liable.
Exactly.
And I was like,
so there's an inherent level of curiosity that leaders need to take on to tackle this problem. I think the other thing I would say is we are separating too many things on the table. And, I use, I think the term, in software development is like secure by design. Why are we not looking at the entire supply chain as a secure by design, through that lens of secure by design? How do you de-risk future work for the government, right? So I know most companies that prime work and bring on subcontractors do a capability analysis. They do their vendor due diligence, and that's a snapshot in time of that company at that moment, their financials, what are their capabilities, and then 2 months later, it could all be different, right?
Just like clearing a road of IEDs.
That's exactly it.
It is only green while you are standing on the spot.
Is it a forever
Second you
war?
move off of it. Yep.
Right. So that inherent level of curiosity that's required, you have to be asking questions constantly. So, our platform is not a silver bullet, but it is a tipping and queuing mechanism. It is continuously monitoring hundreds of millions of unique business entities around the world in real time and news sources, so that you can see a supply chain event that has occurred in real time and then say, is that company that just got affected by that anywhere in my supply chain, and how am I impacted? Rather than this rearward looking thing of, hey, we have a problem, let's fix it, right? It's how do you lean forward into that? And you can't do that, one, without technology, but really you need automation. You need that predictive ability to say, well, in this area, and use like catastrophic risk as an example, right? Down to 10 by 10 grid squares on a map to say, hey, in a few months, 20 years of data tells us there's probably going to be a series of storms that hit that area. So do you need to engage those suppliers early? Do you need to take an action? Is there something you can do? And so I think that's really what I would say. The secure by design is an important element of this as well. I mean, we are, so our government customers that use us, I'll say the best, are leaning well forward into that. And they're engaging with us directly, and not in the sense of, hey, can you do this? It's, hey, we uncovered something and we want your help to understand it better, right? That's the issue, I think, in supply chain right now.